everyone. Welcome to another night of Kwentuhan. We're having a conversation on Kwentong GK. I'm your host, Donna Reyes, and I'm excited to have with us this evening a young lady, a student at Notre Dame University in Indiana, right? And so please
Mhm.
welcome Margi Antonio. Hi.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I had to ask her how to pronounce her because I've heard that she pronounces it Margi. So for those of you who saw the announcements, it's not Margie, it's Margi. Margi actually started her journey in Gawad Kalinga as young as 8 years old, when you were 8 years old, right? And this was when you participated in a GK build somewhere in Manila, which
Mhm.
you remember what village it was or where in Manila it was?
I don't remember exactly where, but I think it's called the Aya Village.
Aya Village.
Yeah, something like that. Aya Village,
Okay. But how much do you remember? Oh my gosh, like 8 years old is so young.
yeah.
How much of
Yeah.
that do you remember?
Well, I remember playing with the kids who were my age at the time, so that was really fun. And also having lunch with the villagers inside their houses and being able to see, how they lived from that perspective.
Do you remember how that felt? Or was there like at 8 years old, you already, did you have any concepts of that you were changing people's lives and stuff like that?
So I actually, well, one of my earliest memories are just something that I remember from early childhood. I think I was like 4 or 5. I was living in the Philippines at the time, and I remember being stuck in Manila traffic, being inside the car, and then having kids come up to the car windows, with no shoes or no proper clothes, and then either begging or selling flowers. Um, and I just remember sitting in the car as a 4 or 5-year-old thinking, why is it like this? Why was I born into this family? Um, and why was she or he, a kid who's my age, who looks just like me, why is that their life? So then I was 4 and 5 asking these kinds of questions, and then it kind of turned into not just, why is it like this, but also like, what can I do to help? Um, so when my mom told me, we're going to build houses, I think I had been living in Singapore by the time I was 8 years old, and we were visiting the Philippines. She told me that we were going to go to the GK build, and I was really excited. Didn't know what to expect at all, but knew that it was something that I wanted to do ever since I was, so young.
So you mentioned that you lived in Singapore. How were you born there, or did you move there when you were very young?
So I was born in the Philippines, and I moved to Singapore when I was 5 or 6.
Okay.
So yeah, I would consider myself to have grown up in Singapore, but I would go to the Philippines like 2 to 3 times every year to
Right.
visit.
But so then at 8 years old, you would have been in Singapore for a couple of years, 2, 3 years, and that's how you
Hmm.
live, question why you were born to a, life of maybe comfort. And, you see children out in the streets, in the Philippines, begging for money. Do you remember like asking your parents questions about that and what they told you?
No, definitely. I remember also just saying I can give them my toys, like I can just trying to find little things that my brain at the time could think of, which was like toys and playing with them and things like that. Um, I don't remember what my parents would tell me, but I do remember that I would ask them all the time. Um, and yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, moving to Singapore um, sort of strengthened that desire for me because I was able to see the standard of living in Singapore versus the standard of living in the streets of Manila, and being able to have that comparison made me want to help people in the Philippines even more.
So from that 8-year-old girl, you grew up to be like 10 years, 11 years after that kind of, passion and compassion for the poor and to help out, never really left you, did it? So at around like 17 years old, you were again involved in building a village this time, not just building a house.
Mhm.
Is that right?
Yes.
All right.
So it's,
So
yeah, I mean, so it's kind of a long story, but my school, so I went to the Singapore American School, and by the time I was 13 years old, I had been going to GK villages occasionally whenever my family would visit the Philippines. And so by the time I was 13, there had been some really amazing students who had pioneered the GK club at the school. And they started doing student-led annual house building trips to the Philippines. So I would join those every year, and eventually I became a leader in the club, and I was co-president by the time I was an upperclassman in high school. And so sort of the foundation of it was house building, but we also, as a club, did a lot of fundraisers. So they were student led. We would do annual fundraisers that first started off as a fun run with 100 participants and grew into over 700 participants and 200 faculty, parent, and student volunteers. So it sort of
wow.
became this uh, just something that the school really looked forward to. It sort of took like this personality of its own. And at first, we were fundraising to sponsor a preschool in Cavite.
Mhm.
But by the time I was a junior, so I think I was 17, we learned that the school was self-sufficient. So we had been doing these fundraisers every year to, I think, donate $12,000 Singapore dollars, something like that. But we learned it was self-sufficient, which is great. But we had, something like 50,000 Singapore dollars from all the fundraisers in our bank, and we were kind of like, what do we do with this? So behind the scenes, the founders and the leaders before me had always had this vision for the club that we would uh, make our own GK village with uh, families that we can connect with and build long-term relationships with, and also just to have a community that we could sort of build from the ground up, because we had gone to GK villages every year, but they were different, and we wanted
Mhm.
to see long-term progress. So that was sort of like a faraway vision,
Mhm.
but we had $50,000, and we learned that it takes 100,000 to build the initial stages of a GK village, and so 100,000 for 20 houses. And we decided that, why not? Let's just make the final push. Let's push for $50,000. We'll raise 100,000 and we'll start building. So that's pretty much exactly what we did. We learned that it was a feasible project in November 2017. November 2018, April 2018, we had a student-led fundraiser with the goal of raising $50,000. But that night we raised close to 80,000. So
Wow.
we were so happy, we were so excited. And that same year in November, we broke ground on the village. And now there are 20 families living there.
So you raised $80,000 on top of the 50,000 you already have. Oh wow, that's
Yes.
amazing. What really amazing and exciting about that story is that you got all of these, people involved, not just students, right? But their families. And
Mhm.
the decision and the conviction to, okay, let's push this and let's make it happen. And you did make it happen. So do you
Mhm.
do you know what the name of the village was? I know it's in Dalaguete, Cebu, right?
Yes.
So what's the name of the village?
So it's the SASGK Village, and SAS is the acronym for Singapore American School. So
And
it
so
was,
this is you said that the name of the organization in your school is GK Club. It's Gawad Kalina Club
yes.
you have in the school.
Mhm.
Oh, wow. And does it still exist to this day? Is there, are there,
It does.
oh,
Yes. So it's
wow.
actually the largest service club at the school. The school is very service oriented, but there's about 150 student members, and 7 student officer team, and then we also have teacher sponsors as well, teacher
That's
interns.
amazing. We need to, I know Maricela is already, Maricela Villanueva is our executive director. Of course, she's the one. Thanks, Maricel, for arranging this with Margie. This is amazing. She said the stirrings in the heart of an 8-year-old and the kind of compassionate action that it led to. That's, I hope Tony Olaes is watching right now. And if she's not, if somebody can message him, that would be great to make sure that he catches the rest of this. Tony Olaes, everybody knows Tony in GKUSA, but for those of you who don't know him, maybe you just started following GKUSA. Tony Olaes was the GKUSA chairman before the Dr. Jun Rafinian, and he actually founded the Filipino school where he takes young Phil-Ams to the Philippines and and basically to a journey toward like knowing their heritage and stuff like that, and then of course showing them the GK villages and everything. But what we want to do here in the US, hopefully before you go back to Singapore, you can help us out with this, is to have that template, bring it to the universities and schools here, right? Same template as the GK club in your school, so that we can, get, Philams involved in our work. I think, a lot of Philams are yearning, really. I think that really is the word, right? Yearning to know and understand what their heritage is and really want to give back and reach out, to people in the Philippines. But we just need some type of mechanism or structure to put that thing together. So this is amazing that you're sharing this. So all right, so we talked about high school. I'm really intrigued, right? How did your parents even got involved? How did they even get involved with Gawad Kalinga? Of course, they're the ones. Your mom was the one who brought you there. Your very first GK builds. And I'm jealous. I've never been to a GK build. Sorry, I have not. But I've been involved with Gawad Kalinga since 2003. It for some reason it just hasn't worked out for me to be involved and make the trip there when there's a GK build. So I'm very jealous. But can you tell us about what your parents maybe backgrounds are, like what do they do and how do they get involved with GK?
Sure. So my mom is from Benguet and my dad is from Manila, and my dad's a lawyer, my mom's a doctor, so very conventional jobs, but they would take us to orphanages when we were really young. So that was another form of exposure I had to just having compassion towards less fortunate people.
Mhm.
And so yeah, they're just very compassionate people, and I think they learned about GK from our family friends. Annette, I don't know if you know Annette Del Rosario.
I know her, but I don't think we've met in person actually. But I
Mhm. Yeah, I think, well, Teacher Tony is the current chairman, I think, of GK. So we were friends with them, and so they introduced us to GK. They brought us on the first build, and then it sort of just continued from there.
So now you're a student at Notre Dame University, as we mentioned earlier. So what course are you taking right now? What do you major in?
So I'm a marketing major.
Awesome. Does that mean was that your marketing major? So business course, is it?
Yes.
And you've always
So
been passionate about that. Like what interests you in marketing?
I like marketing because I feel like it's a way of connecting people. I mean, that's just marketing is this huge umbrella of different things, but that's the part that I'm most interested in. And I mentioned that we did so many fundraisers, and I was always in charge of marketing for them. So I felt like I had, it was just sort of this natural ability. I also just think it's fun and interesting. So that's why I went into it. Um, and just in business in general, one of the reasons why I'm interested in business is because of what I learned from GK about social entrepreneurship. Um, so that's something that I've tried to keep in mind as a business student, and also hopefully something that I would like to implement into my future jobs or initiatives.
So you mentioned GK and how that sort of influenced your interest in social entrepreneurship. Are you familiar with SEED, with GK's SEED program? School,
Yes, I am.
I'm going to get this right. School for Financial and Entrepreneurial Development. So,
Mhm.
are you familiar with that program?
I am. I think I've met some scholars from Seed, and what actually my first exposure to social entrepreneurship and to Seed was on one trip to the Philippines that my club did with this other social enterprise. It's called Mad Travel, and
Mm-hmm.
Mad Travel, yeah, partners with um, Indigenous
From
Filipinos
Graham,
and
right?
GK communities. Yes, I love Mad Travel. So they took us on one trip. We used to organize all the trips just as a club, but we partnered with Mad. And that trip, we went to Zambales, and we went to I think Bulacan is where the GK Enchanted Farm is,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
and that was where I learned that, first of all, GK isn't just about building houses, um, and it's more so about building progressive communities. And then, that's a huge topic. There's so much that goes under that. So whether that's education or sustainable livelihood opportunities, and and then social entrepreneurship is another sort of falls under that umbrella as well. So I feel like that trip was really pivotal in that I learned that there's so much more to um, poverty eradication than I had, initially thought. I thought it was building a house, and that was it. But there's so much more. And so we had when we went to Zambales, that's when I learned about um, sustainability in the sense of both environmental and social and livelihood sustainability. And then we also visited the Enchanted Farm, where I met some Seed scholars, and then I also learned about different social enterprises like Human Nature and Briani Brew, and just some of the amazing uh, businesses that were created by GK Seed scholars and for GK communities. Um, and that was my first exposure to social entrepreneurship, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. Um, and that's something that, like I said, I've tried to continue moving forward as a business student.
So are you sophomore, you said, in college,
Yes.
right? So how many more years before you finish?
So
Uh,
I have 2 years.
you have 2 years. And what are your plans after that?
So I don't have specific plans. Most people will go into corporate jobs, but I definitely want to go into entrepreneurship at some point, whether that's straight after college or a few years in corporate, or um, I just think that I definitely am really interested in social business and would like to see that further.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, there's so much you can do, and for that obviously it's good that that's already your interest, right? It's not something that you're gonna have to um, give up so much of yourself or what you have and everything. But also at the same time, it's something that truly helps, communities, especially in the Philippines, the underprivileged and disadvantaged communities. And so, like, I think, social entrepreneurship is so important that, that because it really empowers, people to, to be able to, build something for themselves, to make a living, right?
Mhm.
And that's going to really impact, a lot of people in the Philippines, if that's something that, that's an option for you to look into. Let me just read a couple more things here. Oh yeah, Tony O is watching. Hi, Tony. Tony O is watching. He said he loving this episode. Awesome. Right. So GK Aya is in Parañaque. So now we know. We know it's in Metro. It's in Parañaque. It's built by family and friends of Tony Del Rosario. Beyond the homes, they started and supported a social business called Milvidas, run by the nanays in the village.
Mhm.
Coming back to you now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we can't really blame you. We're years old, right? For you playing with the kids. I think you mentioned that earlier, playing with the kids there
Yeah.
and everything. All right. Well, this is really awesome. So maybe in just a few minutes up here, you're actually our second female guest, woman guest this month, because we are celebrating Women's Month, right? In March, and you're the second guest that we have, and it's really exciting for me how a young lady like you has already done so much, and now the future is, it's just so much brighter, and there's so much more you can do with, just with your interest and your compassion for people to, to help, again, those people who are in need, right? So what would be your message to young women like you are, and how they can probably impact, the world, and make a difference in people's lives?
Oh, that's a good question. I think one of the most important things that I've learned is it's not about me helping someone else, it's about both of us uplifting each other. Um, and so that's something that I would say is a way to sort of approach, um, whether you call it service or, helping the underprivileged or um, whatever, that we all have something to learn from each other and we all have something to gain, and it's a two-way um, sort of exchange that goes on. Another thing too is to hold on to the connection um, that comes about from these experiences, and to try to take it with you in everything you do, not just for the club or for the organization, but yeah, for just your life.
Right. That's awesome. It's really, GK is a way of life. It's not
Yeah.
compartmentalized, we don't have to compartmentalize in our whatever it is that we do in our life. It's just our way. GK, Gawat Kalinga, literally means to give care. And so that is
Mhm.
the way of life, is to give care. So I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people who will be watching this if they're not watching us live right now, especially people, who are also in universities just like yourself. Would it be okay if they reached out to you if they had questions about, maybe starting their own organization in their schools and stuff like that?
Yes, of course.
And I know I stalked you on social media. I know you have a website. It's margieantonio.com. Can
Mhm.
they just check out that website, and there should be contact information there, right?
Yeah, sure. So the website's actually, because I'm a photographer,
Yeah.
um, yeah, and I'm like a media developer, so that's sort of like a freelance, my own business that I do on the side. But yeah, you can definitely email me from there. I have my Instagram and my email on that, I think.
And what's your Instagram handle? What's your Instagram?
It's just Margie Antonio.
Margie Antonio. So follow her on Instagram, at her website, margieantonio.com. I saw it, really nice pictures there. And thank you, so
Thank you.
much, Margie, for joining me this evening. And good luck on the rest of your, I'm sure you'll do great in school. And I look forward to hanging out with you, hopefully when it's safe. You're 2 hours away from me. They're about, right?
Yeah,
Where's
yeah.
Amsterdam? It's in
It's
India.
in South Bend, Indiana. So
South
if you're
Bend.
in
That's right.
Chicago, yeah, it's
Yeah,
about 2 hours.
yeah, it's about 2 hours. Awesome. Oh,
Mhm.
okay, hang on. Oh, So here's another Miss Universe question for you.
Okay. Oh
The
no.
Tunyola is asked, what does it mean for you to be a Filipino?
That's a really good question. I think that being Filipino to me is sort of this embodiment of a spirit of liveliness and a spirit of giving and just family. Um, so because I grew up in Singapore, but I do have those Filipino roots, um, I feel like I've been able to really appreciate the Philippine culture and perspective, the Philippine culture from a different perspective. And yeah, that's what it means to me. It's just when I'm in the Philippines, it's just a different energy. It's lively, it's exciting, and just the people are the best people in the world. So
Awesome. You
yeah.
did really well with that. I wouldn't even know how to answer that question. You are amazing and inspiring. You really are. I totally agree.
Thank you so much.
I have a question to answer. And I'm like, okay, how would I answer this question if this was me? And good thing I'm on the asking side. That was amazing. And I truly agree. You know, when it comes to being Filipino, we talk about being a lively people, and it's really all about family. And we're so blessed to have you in the GK family, Margie. So look forward,
Thank you so much.
you know, to hearing more from you and maybe hanging out with you in the future. Hopefully in the near future. Thank you for this evening. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
And make it a habit every Thursday, Quantum GK at 5 p.m. Pacific. Good night, everyone.